Lesson 615, Looking Ahead. The presidential election of 2008 was a historic and groundbreaking election. For the first time in more than 50 years, neither an incumbent president nor a sitting vice president would be a candidate. The candidates that had emerged from a greater variety of backgrounds than ever before. In the end, the Republicans nominated Senator John McCain, the Democrats Senator Barack Obama. One of the central themes for the election was experience versus change. You know how the election turned out, but what no one can know for certain is how America will handle the major issues it faces in the years to come. Goals for this lesson. Identify the candidates and major issues of the election of 2008. Explain why the primaries and the national election of 2008 were groundbreaking. And assess the major issues facing the United States in 2009 and beyond. Don't forget to go to lesson resources and grab your reading guide and or lesson answer key, and let's continue on. Reading pages 961 through 963. The election of 2008. The 2008 presidential election campaign began as one of the most wide open in American history. For the first time in more than 50 years, neither an incumbent president nor a sitting vice president would be a candidate. Also, for the first time, serious candidates emerged from a greater variety of backgrounds than ever before. Several Republicans campaigned for their party's nomination. Senator John McCain of Arizona emerged as a leading contender after winning several primaries by early March 2008. McCain was well known and highly respected by Americans in both parties. A former naval officer, he had been shot down and captured in Vietnam and spent several years as a prisoner of war. As a senator, he was considered a maverick, willing to break with his party on some key issues. Less conservative than several other Republican candidates, McCain was a formidable candidate who appealed to a broad cross-section of the voting public. The Democratic race began with many contenders. Hillary Clinton, the former First Lady and U.S. Senator from New York, was an early favorite. But not far into the Democratic primary season, the electoral outlook changed. A relative unknown and newcomer to national politics, Barack Hussein Obama, a first-time senator from Illinois known for his rhetorical eloquence, won the Iowa caucuses. What made this all the more significant was that Obama, an African American, had won in a largely rural and heavily white state. Born in Hawaii to a white American mother from Kansas and a black Kenyan father, Obama spent his formative years in Indonesia and Hawaii, where he was largely raised by his maternal grandparents. After graduating from Harvard Law School, he became a community organizer in Chicago, helping residents of impoverished neighborhoods form committees and groups to meet shared needs, such as improving schools and gaining access to better jobs, housing, and health care. In the summer of 2004, he gained national attention when he gave a stirring address at the Democratic National Convention. 4 months later, when he was elected to the U.S. Senate, Obama's political star was clearly rising. As the primary season unfolded, the Democratic race narrowed to Obama and Hillary Clinton. The candidate of the Democratic Party would be either the first woman to win a major party's nomination for president or the first African American. By May, Obama emerged as the likely winner of the Democratic nomination. Experience versus change. For the Republicans, McCain ran on his reputation for straight talk and long experience. At 71, he would be the oldest person elected president, a fact that gave some voters concern. McCain contrasted his long experience in government to Obama's relative inexperience. He criticized Obama for poor judgment in his choice of associates. Obama's past in Chicago had made incendiary remarks in sermons, and his Chicago political acquaintance had in his student days decades past been a member of the radical Weatherman organization. When McCain made the surprising choice of first-term Alaskan Governor Sarah Palin as his running mate, he energized the conservative base of the Republican Party, who agreed with Palin's stance on key issues. But critics, Republicans as well as Democratic, questioned her qualifications for the presidency should McCain ever be unable to fill the office. For his running mate, Obama chose Senator Joseph Biden of Delaware, who had run against Obama in the primaries. Biden brought long experience in the Senate and was considered an expert on foreign affairs, arguably Obama's weak spot. Obama focused his campaign on the theme of change. He repeatedly criticized the potential McCain presidency as 4 more years of the same failed policies of George W. Bush. Analysts noticed the highly organized efficiency of Obama's campaign, staffed largely by young, computer-savvy workers who made unprecedented use of the Internet to raise funds and convey the candidate's message. That campaign also mobilized tens of thousands of volunteers across the country. Going door to door, they focused on registering millions of new voters, especially in Republican southern strongholds such as Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida. All 3 states would go for Obama in the general election. The war in Iraq dominated the early campaign. But just weeks before the election, the economy came to the forefront as rumblings in the financial markets signaled potential trouble. In mid-September, the stock market fell dramatically, slashing the retirement accounts of millions of Americans whose funds were invested in stocks. Several major financial companies faced failure. Many people around the country faced foreclosure on their homes or loss of their jobs. As the U.S. economy skidded into a deep recession that rippled into the global economy, the focus of that campaign shifted almost exclusively to the economic crisis. Economic worries pushed many voters toward Obama. In the midst of this daunting economic crisis, on November 4, 2008, Barack Obama was elected the 44th President of the United States. Obama won 53% of the popular vote to McCain's 46%. In the Electoral College, Obama's margin of victory was even greater. He won 365 votes to McCain's 173. In a nation marked by a long history of racial tension and division, Americans crossed a significant threshold by electing for the first time an African American as President of the United States. There's a picture of his election with his family. A place where all things are possible. On election night, speaking to thousands of his supporters in Grant Park in Chicago, a victorious Barack Obama acknowledged that the nation faced enormous challenges. He also expressed confidence that those challenges could be overcome. If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, he said, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer. And I believe this will be the almost last page. Yep, this is the very last page in the reading, ladies and gentlemen. Pretty exciting. We've gotten through the whole textbook, so let's finish it off. Barack Obama, More Perfect Union. Illinois Senator Barack Obama found his campaign for the presidency under attack as opponents criticized the inflammatory, sometimes anti-American rhetoric of the pastor of the church Obama attended in Chicago. On March 18, 2008, Obama responded in a speech delivered at the Constitution Center in Philadelphia. His speech went beyond the controversy of the moment to offer an eloquent and candid meditation on the significance of race in both his campaign and the shaping of American society. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, 221 years ago in a hall that still stands across the street, a group of men gathered and with these simple words launched America's improbable experiment in democracy. I chose to run for the presidency at this moment in history because I believe deeply that we cannot solve the challenges of our time unless we solve them together. Unless we perfect our union by understanding that we may have different stories, but we hold common hopes, that we may not look the same, and we may not have come from the same place, but we all want to move in the same direction, towards a better future for our children and our grandchildren. This belief comes from my unyielding faith in the decency and generosity of the American people, but it also comes from my own American story. I am the son of a black man from Kenya and a white woman from Kansas. I was raised with the help of a white grandfather who survived a depression to serve in Patton's army during World War II, and a white grandmother who worked in a bomber assembly line at Fort Leavenworth while he was overseas. I've gone to some of the best schools in America and lived in one of the world's poorest nations. I am married to a black American who carries within her the blood of slaves and slave owners, an inheritance we pass on to our two precious daughters. I have brothers, sisters, nieces, and nephews, uncles, and cousins of every race and every hue scattered across 3 continents, and for as long as I live I will never forget that in no other country on earth is my story even possible. And that is the end of our reading for the entire year in the textbook. That's pretty exciting. Okay, finishing off, it says follow the directions in the student guide to finish today's activity. And if we look at the student guide, we have the use what you know. And this is just one of those personal reflections, not an assignment to be turned in, but just something to kind of think about on your own. If you could have voted in the 2008 election, who would you have voted for, McCain or Obama? And then just think about who and why you would have done so. Just kind of reflect on that and move on. We're going to read the chapter 41 highlights. President Bill Clinton's 2 terms saw several foreign crises, including a civil war in Bosnia, a military coup in Haiti, famine in Somalia, and genocide in Rwanda. On April 1995, a disgruntled Gulf War veteran bombed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. In the presidential election of 2000, a Supreme Court decision not to allow a recount in Florida led to the election of a Republican, George W. Bush, although Democrat Al Gore won the popular vote. President Bush's domestic policy initiatives included a major tax cut, the expansion of Medicare, the No Child Left Behind Act, and faith-based initiatives. President Bush expanded the use of executive privilege, drawing criticism for endangering the constitutional principle of separation of powers. Osama bin Laden helped found al-Qaeda, whose goals included driving Americans out of all Islamic nations, destroying Israel, and toppling pro-Western governments in the Middle East. On September 11, 2001, al-Qaeda launched attacks on the United States, killing nearly 3,000 people. In response to the 9/11 attacks, U.S.-led troops invaded Afghanistan with the goals of toppling the Taliban regime and finding bin Laden. The U.S. government took steps to strengthen security. Airports implemented more comprehensive security screening procedures, the Department of Homeland Security was created, and the Patriot Act became law. U.S. intelligence reports indicated that Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein was attempting to acquire weapons of mass destruction. U.S. troops invaded Iraq to remove Saddam Hussein from power, discover and destroy any WMDs, and to create conditions for democracy to emerge in Iraq. Many argued against the invasion of Iraq, citing the catastrophic results of modern warfare and the desire to let diplomacy work its course. Detractors criticized the resolution that authorized Bush's Iraq invasion for giving the president unchecked power. The Bush White House increased funding for millions of AIDS victims in Africa and acted to help reduce violence in Darfur regions of Sudan. In August 2005, Hurricane Katrina struck the Gulf Coast, killing more than 1,800 people and causing tens of billions of dollars in property damage. State and federal governments faced criticism for the mishandling of the crisis. The presidential election of 2008 was a historic and groundbreaking election. With candidates from a great variety of backgrounds, Americans elected Barack Obama, the first African American president. We are not doing this graded assignment, so you can skip over that. And then the last thing you'll do is take the 615 quiz. So you'll have several lessons to review, 612, 613, 614, and 615. Review those lessons before you take the 615 quiz. And good luck on your quiz, everybody. And congratulations for finishing the textbook reading.